Microlecture 32, World War I. In 1897, a year before his death, Bismarck said, quote, "One day, the great European war will come out of some damn foolish thing in the Balkans." End quote. The reason behind this statement was that nationalism was destroying the Ottoman Empire in Europe and threatening to break up the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In 1908, Serbia was the first country in the area that became openly hostile towards Austro-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. However, Serbian national aspirations were stopped when Austria formally annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina. Then, two nationalist wars, the First and Second Balkan Wars in 1912 and 1913, finally destroyed Europe's centuries-long Ottoman presence. This long-expected event elated Balkan nationalists but dismayed Austria-Hungary's leaders who believed they were next. Within this tense political climate, Serbian nationalist Gavrilo Princip assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife on June 28, 1914 during a state visit to the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo. Austria-Hungary's leaders held Serbia responsible, and on July 23 presented Serbia with an unconditional ultimatum that included demands amounting to Austrian control of the Serbian state. When Serbia did not comply, Austria declared war on Serbia on July 28. Austria-Hungary received the unconditional support of the Germans, who believed that Russia and France were going to intervene to help the Serbians, but were also sure that Great Britain was going to stay away from the conflict. Anticipating a possible conflict, Europe's military leaders had been drawing up war plans and timetables for years, and now these, rather than diplomacy, began to dictate policy. On July 28, as Austrian armies bombarded Belgrade, Tsar Nicholas II ordered a partial mobilization against Austria-Hungary, but almost immediately found it impossible. Russia could not enter the war against Austria without also confronting Germany, so the Tsar declared war against both powers. Germany had its own plans, which include mobilizing troops against both Russia and France. The Germans invaded Belgium on August 3rd on their route to France, and as a consequence, Great Britain declared war the next day. In each country, most of the population rallied to defend its nation and enthusiastically embraced war in August 1914. When the Germans invaded Belgium, the Belgian army first defended their territory but then fell back to join a rapidly landed British Army corps near the Franco-Belgian border. The Germans couldn't capture Paris quickly and instead slowly advanced along an enormous front defended by the Belgians, the British, and the French. The two fighting armies then stayed behind rows of trench, mines, and barbed wire. A space of 100 to 300 yards lay between the two combatants. Eventually, an unbroken line of parallel zigzag trenches stretched over 400 miles from the Belgian coast to the Swiss frontier. By November of 1914, the slaughter was ongoing full steam. For more than 4 years, the war tactic remained the same. After ceaseless heavy artillery sealing to soften up the enemy, young soldiers went over the top of the trenches in frontal attacks on the enemy's line. The human cost of the trench warfare was staggering, while territorial gains were minuscule. In some battles, to gain small pieces of land, the countries had many casualties. In the Battle of Somme, British and French forces gained 125 square miles at the cost of 600,000 deaths or wounded, while the Germans lost 500,000 men. The slaughter was made even greater by new weapons of war, including chemical gases, tanks, airplanes, flamethrowers, and machine guns. In the Eastern Front, the Russians tried to advance towards Germany but were effectively repelled by the Germans and the Austrians. A staggering 2.5 million Russians were killed, wounded, or taken prisoners. The changing tides of victory and hopes of territorial gain brought neutral countries into the war. Italy, a member of the Triple Alliance since 1882, declared its neutrality in 1914. Then, in May 1915, Italy joined the Triple Entente of Great Britain, France, and Russia to gain territories in Austria. The same happened with Bulgaria, that wanted Serbian territory. Another power that joined the conflict in Europe was the Ottoman Empire, which allied with Austria and Germany to fight against the Russians, their historical enemy. The Ottomans' entry pulled the entire Middle East into the war and made it a truly global conflict. While Russia attacked the Ottomans in the Caucasus, the British protected their rule in Egypt. In 1915, at the Battle of Dardanelles, the British tried to take Constantinople from the Ottomans, but failed. The British also formed guerrilla groups in the Arabian Peninsula and the Persian Gulf. Hussein ibn Ali and T.A. Lawrence led a successful confrontation against the Ottomans and created the Arab kingdom now known as Saudi Arabia. In the Ottoman province of Iraq, Britain occupied Basra in 1914 and captured Baghdad in 1917. In 1918, British armies, aided by imperial forces from Egypt, India, Australia, and New Zealand, smashed the old Ottoman state, bringing revolutionary change to the Middle East. In East Asia, Japan joined the Triple Entente in 1914 and hit German interests in the Pacific like Shandong in China. War also spread to the colonies in Africa and East Asia. Colonized people provided critical supplies and fought in Europe, Africa, and the Ottoman Empire. More than 1 million Africans and Asians served in the various armies of the warring powers. The war had a profound effect on the colonial troops. Fighting against and killing Europeans destroyed the impression that the Europeans were superhuman. New concepts like nationalism and individual freedoms were carried home to become rallying cries for future liberation struggles. In 1917, the United States declared war on Germany. American intervention grew out of the war at sea and sympathy for the Triple Entente. Since 1915, the Germans were not using their submarines after they sank a British passenger line called the Lusitania. 139 US citizens were on board, and the government of Woodrow Wilson heavily protested. In 1917, Germany used submarines again, and the US entered war, tipping the balance in favor of the Triple Entente. The war's impact on civilians was massive. Total war mobilized entire populations, led to increased state power, and promote social inequality. It also led to dissent and growing anti-war movements. Governments imposed rationing, price and wage controls, and even restrict workers' freedom of movement. In the spring of 1918, the Germans launched their last major attack against France and failed. A defeated Germany finally agreed to a truce on November 11, following the ones already signed by the Austrian-Hungarian and the Ottoman leaders. All three monarchies fell and their empires broke apart. In January 1919, the victorious Western Allies came together in Paris, hoping to establish a lasting peace. The Allies soon worked out peace terms with Germany, created the League of Nations, and reorganized Eastern Europe and Southwest Asia. However, the 1919 peace settlement, known as the Treaty of Versailles, failed to establish a lasting peace or solve the issues that brought the war in the first place. The Great War's ultimate tragedy was that it cost $332 billion and left 10 million people dead and another 20 million wounded. This is all I have for you today. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.